So let's get started by sending it over to Craig.
I'm really excited about what we have to show you today. But first, let's head downstairs.
Today we have our special guest, Craig Fedorig from Apple. He's the Senior Vice President for Software Engineering. We are proud to note, it's not on the slide here, that he received his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and computer sciences here, and afterwards pursued and received his Master of Science degree in computer science. So he's a proud Berkeley engineer. So we're really proud to have him join us here to share his personal journey with us. After Craig graduated, he was already an accomplished software engineer. He took on a lot of positions at companies in Silicon Valley, including Oracle and Next Computer and Apple. He's been at Apple. He's taken multiple tours at Apple and moving up the ranks. And today he leads all of software engineering for the operating systems for your iPhones, for your iPads, and for the Mac computers. So it's a really significant role. He reports directly to the CEO, Tim Cook. I think he calls it questionable advice, but I think you'll join me in welcoming him to wholeheartedly share his personal journey with us so that we can learn from his experience and his advice. So please join me in welcoming Craig to the stage.
I'm Craig. I'll introduce myself, I guess, a little bit,
again?
and I'll start by saying hello. So who am I? My name's Craig Fedorig, in fact, and my name sort of looks like an encryption code you get handed out of when you're trying to decrypt your disk or something. It's pronounced roughly like this, Fedorig. If you forget it, you could say fettuccine. When I was kind of a persecuted freshman in high school, some people would call me fettuccine, I guess. I was okay with that. So why am I here? This is a great mystery for me. I think Berkeley, well, in an existential sense, it's a huge mystery, but if you look around Berkeley, there are just incredible people. In fact, if you look to your left and you look to your right and probably look at your own hands, there are people more interesting and deserving of being on the stage than me, but here I am. So why am I here? Here we are. What are we going to do about this? So I've gotten a question that I think has given me a reason to understand why at least I was asked to be here. Recently in the cafeteria at work, a new college grad who just joined the company came up to me and he asked, "How can I become you?" Now, needless to say, that's a pretty disturbing question. I thought my wife might have some issues with it. I wasn't exactly sure what it would mean to me personally when that occurred. But I think what he really meant was, how can I get your job? And I'd be happy working for this young fellow. He seemed pretty nice. So he's really looking for career advice. He's looking for insights. I guess he was looking for wisdom. In truth, despite my years of going through this journey, I have none of these things to offer you today. I can offer my story and let you derive whatever wisdom from it you can. So we'll get started. Now, unfortunately, my recollection of my past is quite hazy. But I did do a little bit of research. You're not like live blogging or something there, are you? So I did do some research and uncovered a little bit of historical evidence. And so let's start at the start. How did I get here? Well, as best I can tell, it started about 13.8 billion years ago. And there was an event. It was called the Big Bang. And apparently stars formed, decayed, exploded, and eventually, on this planet, about 50,000 years ago, our species ventured forth out of Africa and into Western Europe. From there, about 121 years ago, my genetic material migrated and coalesced on this point. So I began then a 40-year lifetime migration. This is actually my life's migratory path. I know what you're saying, wild stuff. This guy's been an adventurer. That's right. So I could, and in fact, how did I get here? In truth, it was a 90-minute drive this morning. Like an aged salmon heading upstream, I rode up through the river of my life up to here. Presumably this afternoon, I will I'm here to pass on to the next generation, and then I guess presumably I'll find my way back further east, and it'll all end for me there. So a few more details that might add a little color to my story. So let's start at the start. This is allegedly me. I was born in San Leandro. It's pretty close, just across, just down 580. When I was 10 years old, I got a cool shirt for one. My interest back then, I was really into skiing. I also was into basketball. In fact, I was pretty sure I was going to be Dr. J. He was my idol, and I was going to join the NBA. Now, it did not work out. What did happen is there was an after-school program, and my mom said, "Hey, son, maybe the NBA is not going to be your thing. You should do this computer class. There are these things called computers, and they're bringing some Apple IIs around after school. You should do that." And I said, "Mom, only posers are into computers. Just people who want to seem cool, they go and they do the computer thing." But I went, and it was a mind-blowing event. In fact, there were several hours of trying to draw pictures by plotting lines, and I thought, this is dumb. But then there was a moment at the very end where they had us write this program. How old are you? Input A, print in 10 years, you will be A plus 10. And my mind exploded. I mean, that was it. I was like, I know exactly the future now, and I am going to be part of it. It's all about computers. I kid you not. I'd had a little nugget of life savings. It wasn't enough to buy a computer, so I started doing housework and doing weeding, and I was doing all these chores because I was going to buy a computer. And eventually I did. I bought a TRS-80 color computer, look it up, 6809 processor, decent thing. I couldn't afford an Apple at the time. But I worked, I got jobs, little odd jobs doing programming. After I taught myself some things, eventually I was able to afford an Apple. And then finally in 1984, the Mac came out, and I was able to experience the Mac. And it was at that moment, bringing together really the humanities and computer science in this way that previously I couldn't fully imagine, that it all really connected for me. And I decided at that time that someday I would work for Apple. I think I was in junior high at the time. So after this, I went to Berkeley. So that was awesome. I brought another Mac with me, and eventually there were more Macs. And then in 1988, I think it was, Steve Jobs had since left Apple, and he had introduced the next machine in San Francisco, and he came to Berkeley to kind of give a reperformance of the launch of the Mac. There was no YouTube then. I wasn't going to be able to see that launch online, but he came to the PSL, and he kind of redid the whole launch of the product and showed off the next Cube. And for me, this was just an absolute revelation. I thought it was just incredible. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to work for Apple. I'm going to work for Next. So that was my future. In the meantime, coming to Berkeley, of course, I had to fit in. So I got an electric guitar. That was totally key. And that's really the only explanation for this. Because now, why? So the bandana was actually necessary for studying to keep my hair out of my eyes. If we pan down, you'd see actually the circuit board, where in CS150 we were building a digital answering machine with all these wires connecting it, and that's what I was working on, apparently with my sunglasses on. Totally unclear. Just for posterity, here's my senior year Berkeley dining card. So that was good stuff. Now, I was a very generally pretty shy, socially awkward person, so this whole look was pretty key because I could walk down the street and people would just clear to the other side, which says something at Berkeley, right? That people were like, I don't want to be anywhere near whatever craziness is going on there. So I was at Berkeley. It was a fantastic educational experience for me. After being so into computers and programming from really age 10 on, when I got to Berkeley, it was like this is everything I want to know. Every class is like, I want to learn more about that. I want to learn more about that. So incredibly exciting. And not just the computer science classes. I mean, taking philosophy classes and political science classes and business classes. I mean, all of this was just incredibly eye-opening for me. When I wrapped up, most students their senior year were thinking, what are they going to do with themselves? I had completely neglected to keep track of the fact that I was about to graduate and needed a job. And fortunately, there was a company that was an incredibly aggressive recruiter, and since I'd done nothing to try to seek a job, I accepted their offer and headed down to Oracle. But the key for me was throughout my late high school and college years, I thought, next thing I'm going to do after I graduate is I got to spend a winter skiing. So I headed out west to Colorado and spent the winter doing this kind of stuff. But the key was I brought my next computer with me and actually worked remotely from a little cabin. It was like a little ski monk thing. You'd ski in the morning and then come back and code in the afternoon. But interestingly, I did some of the most, I guess, kind of inventive work at the time, in my time, in this weird environment. So sometimes inspiration comes in strange places. So I headed back and ended up coming back to Berkeley for graduate school in '92 to seek a master's. I brought my next computer with me. I did all my classes there and just through a modem uploaded all my stuff to the school systems. And grad school was great. But after that, I was actually able to fulfill my goal and got to join Next. And then a strange thing happened because when I was young, I thought I'd be at Apple, but then I decided I wanted to be at Next, and then I show up at Next, and then we get acquired by Apple. So back at Apple again. But this was a fantastic period for me. There were so many different problems to work on. And a lot of things I didn't anticipate working on, I got to learn about, and some of that led to something called web objects, like really a declarative user interface kind of environment for building web services, and I did that for a while. But then the whole B2B e-commerce, you all know about the .com crash. So before that happened, there was the .com bubble, and I got to participate in that. I worked for a company called Ariba. By then I was a management type, I guess, or partly, did a lot of coding, but my job was CTO. Now this is a good gig if you can get it. I did platform architecture, kind of UI and app design, product strategy. I was sort of the demo guy. So this was good times, but most importantly in this period of my life, I defied all expectations and met a woman, my wife, who agreed to marry me. So this was fantastic. Now, strangely, after that, this thing started to happen where these kids started to show up. Now, we never quite figured out why this was happening, but eventually it did stop after we made 4 of them. So there's that. And it became a little bit overwhelming. And so after having done a little bit of the CTO kind of semi-executive thing, I actually decided to take a couple of years and returned to being an individual contributor engineer, and did a bunch of open source stuff. If you go to aribaweb.org, you can probably still see the website I left there over a decade ago. But that engineering, writing code is still kind of my favorite thing to do in my spare time, and it felt great to return to doing that. But after that period, I returned finally came back to Apple. It was really kind of home for me, and apparently I'm going to die there. So I started with Mac OS, and then went on to do iOS as well, and it's been an incredible opportunity and journey for me there. So what can we learn from all of this? A few possible lessons. So one that's very clear is don't move. So wherever you're born, stay there and wait for the industry that you need to erupt right around you, and then just seek employment there. Second lesson, heavy metal. I mean, it's very clear that is a key element of growth. And neglect looking for a job. If any of you were planning on looking for a job, set that aside. Ski, very important. And also pick one haircut in the 80s and just stick with it. It was absolutely, haven't changed my instructions to the barber ever since. So seriously, there are a few things I'd observe that I don't know if these are important or essential, but they are some things that I think seem to be important to me. So how can I get your job? Well, in truth, the key part is first, we'll go with 7 easy steps. First step is don't want my job. So I didn't want my job. So maybe you shouldn't either. I think the most important thing to do is to focus on doing what you love. If you're worried about where you're going, where this all will take you, if you're too focused on the destination, I think you'll miss the journey. And when you do what you love, it turns out that the things you do in your spare time, like on my time, if I have a moment on the weekend, I'm going to be reading things about our programming. I'm going to be reading things about software or artificial intelligence because that's what I love. So it's like if you do something you love, it's like cheating because all of your recreational time actually turns into time that helps you develop in your career. So that part is super important. Second, work with people whose work you admire. I think the thing about me being drawn to Next was I saw this product back in '88 that I said, it just spoke to me. This is an incredible piece of work. I need to see what it's like to be among the people who can do that kind of thing. And so I felt magnetically drawn to be among the people who did this kind of work that I really appreciated and to learn from them. And that gets me to number 3, which is pay attention. It's amazing in life. One of my kids actually said to me the other day, they said, I figured out a secret. Like in class, pay attention. I thought, wow. Because they're like, all the other kids are not paying any attention. And we have to sit there anyway. Imagine how much you could learn if you paid attention. But during life, I mean, you are, through your working life, through your school life, you're surrounded with all of these opportunities to learn. And not just in your field, not just in the thing that you think you're studying, but all those things peripheral to the field you're studying. There's so many fascinating things to learn. And for me, I carried around a notebook, paper, and a pencil, and was just taking notes all the time. People thought I was like a wandering reporter or spy or something because I was just constantly jotting things down because there's just so many interesting things. And if you're making use of the time to suck them all in, if you're curious, it really helps. Number 4, and this is kind of related, never stop acting like the new one on the team. When you first join a team, and for those of you who've done internships, you get to have that moment. When you first get a job, you show up and no one expects you to know anything, and so you get to ask the stupid questions. You get to say, I don't know anything about that. Can you tell me about that? Why did we do that? I've never stopped being that person. That's such a valuable moment to say, it's okay if I don't know everything, I can have questions, and if you do, it turns out some of those questions are questions that team probably should have been asking themselves and wasn't, and so if you're asking them, you might get some answers that everybody needs to hear, but also it's that permission to just be learning and learning and learning, because it's not just about being narrow and being, wanting to be secure in one little area. Every adjacency is an area to explore, and the way you're going to broaden yourself and learn is to just feel the permission to ask the questions all along the way. Another thing is, I see team more important than self. When I've joined projects, I've decided that whatever the team's mission is, whatever we're trying to accomplish, I want to be part of making that happen, and I want to do everything that can be done to make that happen. If it's we're going to go work. There's a point I joined a team and they weren't a part of the release where it was all about bug fixing. All I was going to do for a year was fix bugs, which didn't sound like the coolest thing to do. It turned out to be an incredible learning opportunity. There was a part we had to work on performance. Well, I got to learn about performance because we had to fix the performance of the thing I was working on. If you become part of adopt the mission of the team, adopt that project, you find that there's so many different ways you can help, and along the way, so many different ways you can learn, where if you're focused more about what does this mean for me, what am I interested in, I think you miss out on all of those opportunities. And I think related to this is this notion of committing for a period of time. I guess I always looked at my career as I'm going to spend 4 or 5 years, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to wake up each morning and say, am I doing the right thing? Should I take a turn here? Is this my path to where I want to be? Instead, I said, this is what I'm going to do, and my focus is just, immersing myself in that thing. Because it'd be like if you got married and every day you woke up and you said, am I married to the right person? Like, that would not be a good relationship, right? To have that thought in your head the whole time, super bad. So I do not have that thought in my head. But the same thing can happen in work. You see these people so worried about, angsty about, am I in the right job? Am I heading in the right direction? Assess the situation, make a choice. All these choices are imperfect. And then commit for a while. Give yourself the opportunity to really experience it, and then set yourself a deadline and say, you know, in a year or 4 years from now, I'm going to step back from having done all this, and then assess what I want to do next. But that certainly has been important to me, both in my sanity and in my ability to really commit in a way that I think allowed me to learn and do good work. So number 7, follow your heart. Cheesy, but it's been super important for me. So there have been numerous, sort of the most important decisions I've had to make. I feel like I made the decision that if you were analytical about it, if you made, I had an important decision to make, and I asked my dad, I'm having trouble. Do I take this job here, or do I go to grad school? Do I take this position here, or do I go over here? When I went to Next, I took a big pay cut to join a failing company. Didn't seem like too smart a move, but I felt, my dad said, make a list, write down all the good and bad of this decision, add it all up, there you go. I made the list. I obviously shouldn't go work for Next. But when I thought of making the decision on that side of things, I just got a feeling in my gut like, no, I want to be there. And it turned out there was probably something wise or intuitive about what was drawing me to the right decision. And the ability to listen to yourself in those moments and make those decisions, I think over and over on the most important decisions, that's been super important. And then when you're there, you feel good about it. So, and of course, I say all of this. This is one story, one data point. Let's be honest. Be very, very lucky. So however you figure that out, I haven't cracked the code, but it seemed to happen for me. So that's a little advice. Thank you very much.